Bob Dylan records 10 songs in 1974. Then, with the advice of his brother, decides to re-record half of them. What we get is Blood on the Tracks. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Eric, we finally got it.
We did.
We did it.
Glitches.
We've ironed everything out, better than a dry cleaner. We've ironed out the glitches.
We love those technical glitches, don't we?
Oh, it's what makes life
interesting. I think that's how we get to know our guests better. Because if they're willing to come back on, and after all the nonsense is, we're trying to get everything straightened out, and they're still hanging around, that means they want to be here. So
exactly, and more importantly, Eric, they see that we don't crumble under pressure.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
we didn't break. We didn't break whatsoever. So if it's your first time joining us, hey, welcome aboard. You've picked a great episode. There's a whole bunch of other episodes in the back room, so you can go check those out at your leisure. New episodes come out every Thursday, and you could set your watch to that, I guarantee you. We're very consistent with that. We love bringing you new content about old movies or old music or new music. We kind of do it all. We got a great episode. I'm looking forward to this. This is territory, Eric, that we have not traversed yet.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with we'll start with the youngin. I think I called him the grasshopper on the last episode he was on. Mr. Christopher Clark is here. Welcome aboard. How are you?
Good to be here.
It's good to have you. Next to Mr. Christopher Clark, if you're not watching this, if you're not watching the video, there is a gentleman next to Christopher Clark, and it's his dad, Kevin Clark. I get to call him Kevin. You got to call him Dad. Kevin, or for this episode, you're going to be saying, "Hey, Kevin,"
I'm going to call you Dad.
Kevin, welcome aboard. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Kevin is joining us because we're going to be leaning a little bit on his expertise. He's a big Dylan fan. When I reached out to Chris about doing the episode, he's like, "Hey, my dad lived this. He was there." I'm like, let's get people on that, that have a passion for it. So Kevin, we're looking forward to hearing your point of view about things. As always, you can look forward to at some point in this episode, we're going to be doing 3 lies and a truth, which means I'm going to give 4 statements to these gentlemen. 3 of them are patently false. 1 is real, but they'll have to figure that out for themselves. I'm not going to help. But you can play along at home as well. And have fun with it. So we'll get to that a little later on. But first up, let's talk stats. Let's get the statistics out of the way. This was released in January of 1975, produced by Phil Ramone and Bob Dylan. There was only one single formally released, which was Tangled Up in Blue. That hit number 31. This album did hit number 1 on Billboard. And it went 2 times platinum. So that's excess of 2 million copies out the door of this album. Before I turn it over to Kevin, and he can maybe set the table for what I'm about to say, but everything I've read, Kevin, is at the time that this album came out, it wasn't highly regarded. It was kind of a middling. This was like, Dylan. It's like, okay, like what else? What have you done for me lately?
It didn't get great reviews from a lot of people. But it was a very productive time for Dylan because he had been on Asylum. He had left Columbia Records and gone to Asylum. He did the tour with the band, which was very successful. And then he came back to Columbia, released the Basement tapes, which had been bootlegged a lot in the 60s and early 70s. And then he put this album out, which, it was just great songwriting and stuff. And it started a really productive time for him. He did the Rolling Thunder Review after. Desire was a great album that went platinum and all that. So it was a really good time for him. He really kind of latched on for those next couple of years before he found Jesus.
Yeah, in the late 70s, early 80s. So, Kevin, do you think it was kind of do you think it was a situation of the critics kind of taking Dylan for granted at this point? It's kind of like, you did your rebellious political stuff, you went electric, and then you went to Nashville, and
he did that, and he did, of course, that album Self-Portrait. Yeah. Which I used to avoid. I never listened to it for years upon years. But you know what? I finally listened to it, and you know what? It wasn't that bad as they said. It was different, but it wasn't as bad. But it was. He had kind of fall out. But once he did Blood in the Tracks and Tangled Up in Blue, and even the original recordings that he did that were in New York. His brother made him. He recorded in Minneapolis. He went with his brother. His brother told him he needed a new band. Even those that eventually came out in the bootleg, they're good. It's more of a going back to his acoustic time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Chris, how does your dad's love of this? Because Chris, you put this on a list of stuff that you sent me. So taking your dad out of the picture, we would have been talking about this with you. So how does the influence of your father figure into this, or does it?
I mean, I can definitely attest to this, and if my brother were here, he would attest to it too. My house, there was always music on, and there's always kind of a couple of like go-tos. It was always like, Crosby, Stills and Nash and Dylan and The Who and Cat Stevens. And so it kind of was like in utero, like, we grew up listening to Dylan and being around Dylan. And as we got older, my brother and I really developed a serious appreciation for him and what he had to offer. And in fact, I feel like we're going deeper down that rabbit hole as we become older, but Dylan was always there. Like I definitely grew up listening to all of this stuff. So it was definitely something that was always kind of a part of who I was and who I appreciated and listened to musically. So, it's just always been a part of who I am.
Yeah. Now, Eric, I can't hang on one second, Kevin. Eric, I came to this very late in my life. Where did you come in on Blood on the Tracks?
The album that made me take notice of Bob Dylan, ironically, was Time Out of Mind. It's one of my favorite later career efforts, but it's such a fantastic album. It made me take notice. Dylan, sort of was there. I never really kind of dove into Dylan. I kind of, listened to certain things, but Blood on the Tracks might be part of the big three for me. Because I love when Dylan gets introspective and when he gets personal, more so than the sort of voice of a generation type of thing, or when he's, politically or anything like that. I prefer when he has something to say of a personal nature. In this case, this more or less one of his more romantic efforts, I feel. But yeah, I love 461. This one, and then I think Time Out of Mind might be my big three. I know we talked about Nashville Skyline, which was kind of an outlier.
That's because I wanted to.
Well, but that one was kind of an outlier. I mean, I enjoy that album immensely because he's at least he's trying to attempt to sing, and
it's a different Dylan.
It's a different Dylan. It's more of a country feel, and I think he kind of leaned into that, and it's fun. But I think as far as my favorites go, I'm glad I kind of came back to this album because I hadn't listened to it in quite a while. It was, it's Shelter in the Storm.
Yep, absolutely.
There it is.
Kevin,
the one for me.
What do you got, Kevin?
Actually, Chris. So what I was going to say is, for me, that's what I like about it too, is that it's kind of relatable. It's that personal piece of like, he could, and I've seen where he's denied it and then sometimes affirmed it. The idea that it's about his divorce from his first wife, and it's kind of relatable. Of like, I'm sure there's a lot of people in his generation that grew up listening to him that were going through those things as well. So even if it got slammed a little bit by the critics, I gotta believe that people who were listening to him kind of could relate to some of what he was going through and the pain that he might have been feeling by going through the divorce with his wife, who's first Sarah, right?
Sarah was
first wife.
Yeah.
So that actually, I was going there. And Kevin teed it up perfectly. He hit everything I was going to say. He comes off of touring with the band. He starts a relationship with a Columbia Records employee, Ellen Bernstein, while he was still married to his wife, Sarah. Now, Dylan, to Chris's point, Dylan denies the autobiographical nature of it. He's like, why would I don't need to talk about that. He's so aloof sometimes. Like but his son, Jacob Dylan, who was
going to say that
very young, he said, no, he goes, no, this is absolutely that. So Kevin, is it Dylan just kind of having those walls up, but then expressing himself via music? Because that seems like what he does is he never wants to be bothered with people, but then you hear it.
I think he's probably a very private guy, but if you listen to his music, and there's one thing, whether he's 20 or now he's 80 or whatever he is, 85 or whatever he is now, he is always evolving, always changing. He never just settles. He never rests on his laurels. Like Time Out of Mind, you mentioned, was a great album that came out probably in the late 90s. It was great. And Good.
I think he puts all his producers through hell. I think every producer he's ever worked with, he's constantly coming in, changing, even on the day, like the projects themselves. I mean, you talk about changes 2-3 times, like different versions of song, which is why that there's a whole series of official bootleg. The entire bootleg series is based on those changes and what he, so you get an alternate side of Dylan, that a whole plethora of music that is just, I mean, fantastic. And it's, some of the stuff could be even better than the actual album. So I find.
Yeah, and even the people that he works with, as far as like musicians go, they're like, he doesn't really talk to us. We kind of come in, we're not really near him, and he kind of does what he does. So, it's very strange, and especially on this album, Kevin, right? Because these lyrics are so very personal, or they seem like they are. Especially starting off with Tangled Up in Blue. I mean, what I love about that song or this album, and I think where Dylan excels, is once he shed the whole political thing or the people's notions of what that was, he just became a master storyteller. Track after track on this album it's almost like a travelogue of a guy going to different places and or meeting different people or reminiscing on past loves. Is that fair? Is that what you got from it as well?
I think so. Yeah. Believe me.
Yeah, 100%. And the more I listen to it, I listened to it a lot in the last couple of weeks, and it's definitely where you
can hear it.
You definitely kind of. It's almost like it, to me. It plays like a concept record after a while.
It absolutely kind of could be about relationships, about the ending or beginning of relationships, or just where he kind of is at this point in his life. Simple Twist of Fate. I mean, we're not going to go through each track, but there's a lot on here to chew on. And what I love about it, that first, even before he recorded the 10 songs, he was going to do the album electric. And then he opted for a more stripped down production, which I think works.
Yeah.
I think that's where Dylan's at his best, is when you can just hear him. He doesn't need ELO style production or he doesn't need that. He just needs a guitar, and he just needs to say, we need to hear his voice because it's so unique.
Yep. And
Kevin,
what I was going to say is if you listen to some of the live stuff, like I really like that Rolling Thunder Review bootleg, and I like
Hard Rain's
a great record.
Hard Rain's a great record.
And if you go and find those songs where it's just like him and a guitar, I almost feel like they played just as well as on the album, if not better, because it's.
Yeah.
I feel like the more stripped down the songs are, the better they are, and the more laid bare they are. I think they're even better that way.
Yeah, and that's a testament to Dylan. What's that?
They even did a bootleg, More Blood on the Tracks, which is the original New York recordings that are very stripped down. Tangled Up in Blue. It's a great song, I'm telling you, and it's just him and guitar. He's really, he makes it his own, whatever he does.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that, and he was working with alternate tunings on this album, some open D tunings, so it was kind of expanding in that way. Although you probably wouldn't notice it because the production is very sparse, which is good because it's not a distraction, Eric. Right? I think that's the key with Dylan is he's not a bells and whistles type guy. He's kind of put me in front of the mic. Let's just kind of do it and let his voice is more important to the arrangement and how he presents the lyrics.
He's very centered on this record. But the production's there. There are several tracks where you hear those guitars, those acoustic guitars are stacked, and they're playing some guys playing a different in a different key than what Dylan's playing, and it's beautiful. There's some really great, intricate, nice guitar on this album. That was what I like in the background. And it's sort of like a totem pole of like, but they're kind of odd, right? It's not perfect. It's not, they're not harmonizing. Everybody's kind of playing their thing all at the same time, which is very true to like, even his later stuff, like Time Out of Mind, they're doing that. It's sort of that muddy, everybody just doing their thing. And he didn't want, he wanted to strip that back. And I think the latest bootleg of that is a more laid back version of that record. And it reminds me of Blood on the Tracks because they stripped the production back, although you could still hear those inflections, Daniel Lanois, stuff. You can't totally get, cancel all that out. But he really wanted to kind of redo it and just do kind of an more of acoustic thing, much like Blood on the Tracks.
Yeah, and Kevin, some of that stuff on Blood on the Tracks, it feels a little loosey goosey, like Meet Me in the Morning, which is kind of a straight up blues song, and it's got some fuzzy guitar. It doesn't have it doesn't have the usual like blues solo that I'd be expecting. You usually expect a blues solo to kind of follow the chord changes, but it didn't. So it's almost informal. I mean, was there anything else at the time that you were listening to that was similar to this?
From somebody else, probably Neil Young. Absolutely, during that time. You know, we did
Harvest
on the Beach.
The Ditch trilogy was coming out at that time.
You had Harvest, you had On the Beach, and
the live record.
Time Fades Away.
Time Fades Away.
So he's very. I always think of them too in the same way because they're always changing and they're always doing their own thing. You know.
Yeah, and I never made that. I never made that connection.
Exactly. They're always, when they just do their own thing, and that's why they're successful. And
yeah, kind of the Mavericks of.
As you get older, it's a little inspiring because they don't let age stop.
No,
and they're still doing it.
Yeah. No, that's right.
That's true. And you know what? Maybe that makes it easier for him because he's able to kind of go out sparsely. And just kind of goes tour. He tours lightly. He doesn't have a lot of people in the band, and he goes out. Now Neil Young, on the other hand, he can go with a whole entourage, or he can do it stripped down as well. But Dylan, I think, has been on what's called the Never Ending Tour, I think, since 1980 something.
Yep. Never stops touring.
Yeah, like 180 dates a year or something like that. The guy's insane. Like, get a life. I mean, I know that is a life, but
and he changes. He changes his thing every night. He plays like the Grateful Dead does. He plays different songs. Yeah. There's only 2 songs you're guaranteed to hear. We saw him.
What did he do? Tangled Up in Blue?
Nope. All Along the Watchtower and Like a Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Those 2 you're going to hear.
Then he changes the arrangements. There was a lot of songs that was hard to figure out when you saw him.
Yeah, we had that. We
had that experience.
Go. Yeah, check out our Nashville Skyline episode for our Dylan experience when Eric and I saw him live too. We saw him recently.
We saw him with Jack White opening. Jack White just blew him off the stage. Yeah.
Jack White was great.
Wow, that's a bill I would have liked to have seen. Jack White and
Dylan. Did they play together? Did he come out? No, I'm surprised. Wow.
I don't think Dylan's that kind of guy. I don't think he's going to let someone come out with him and share the stage.
I don't. He did it with Petty. He did it with Jewel. Jewel opened for him at one point. He had her out. He had, you got to come out with me. I mean, I guess he's got to be in the mood. Maybe he's, if he's not too cranky or whatever. But
that's Petty and the Dead were his backing band, if I'm not mistaken, for the whole show.
What's that?
Petty and the Dead, when they toured with him, were like his backing band.
That's a different thing.
Completely off subject. Is that Felix Pappalardi behind you in that post?
That's Jeff Lynne.
Oh, that's Jeff Lynne.
Felix Pappalardi?
Kevin,
how would I have a poster of Felix Pappalardi behind me?
I was surprised.
You're going to get the bell for that. That's Jeff Lynne. And don't you forget it.
All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
What I love about this album, and again, from different points of references that I have, is how he takes his time. Some of these songs there's 2 like that are 8 minutes, like Idiot Wind, and he's not afraid just to kind of let these songs unfurl, and it's literally like listening to poetry put to music, and you want to kind of, and I found myself like putting the lyrics on because I want to read, not because I couldn't understand, but I wanted to read it while he was singing it, because just he places, Delacroix, Algiers, like he talks about these places very casually, which other songwriters would probably struggle. It would seem like it was shoehorned in, Kevin, right? Is that part of the appeal of Dylan, is that it's natural?
He's like a mathematician with words. I mean, he just puts words in there like nothing. I mean, he's great with them. He's a poet.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, on his next album after Blood on the Tracks, Desire, he had a lyricist work with him, Jacques Levy.
Really?
Who actually wrote lyrics to him. Yeah.
That must have been scary for him. Like, oh, like,
yeah,
Dylan wants me to write lyrics.
I guess he was hanging out with him at the time and he wrote lyrics. Doc Levy, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's and another epic song on is Lily Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not a very sparse song. Like it almost seems like there might be just 2 chord changes, and he just kind of keeps not droning on, but going through each verse and then returning to the Jack of Hearts. And it almost sounds strange. It's like it almost makes the song sound like it doesn't rhyme, but there's a whole bunch of rhyming verses before. But then he always ends on Jack of Hearts. Yeah. He keeps returning to that theme as he goes through each verse and each part of each adventure that the characters have. So yeah,
Bucket of Rain is another good one. Yeah, Bucket of Rain.
It's one of my favorite. Bucket of Rain and Shelter from the Storm. But like the way the album closes out is, not that it's not pensive and reflective before, but it really kind of starts to kind of come down on like a soft landing almost.
Exactly.
He kind of starts to tie everything up, and it really just, again, it's for me, Kevin. I have such a hard time reconciling, again, how aloof and how distant the man is, because normally people that are like that wear their heart on their sleeve. They're usually very open and don't mind talking about emotions, whereas he is very guarded and doesn't. And you only get glimpses.
He's a loner. Yeah, I mean, he's by himself. It's
so strange.
Yeah, I mean,
Eric, did you know? What's that?
That's his way of communicating with the world, I guess.
Yeah, because there was also another thing where I think towards the late 70s or early 80s, he started drinking, and someone had said, "Oh, your drinking was interview or whatever, your drinking was influenced these songs." He goes, "Why would that? I drink, I don't drink. Why would it influence?" Like he always kind of denies things and kind of like just shuts things down quickly.
Oh yeah, you say black, he'll say white. I mean that. Yeah. I mean, he
just
will
because.
Never agree, and just because that's just Dylan. He's just such an he's an enigma. He just doesn't. He's otherworldly. I think he he comes from a different mindset, and I don't know if he does it on purpose.
Yeah,
or if he does it just if he's really that. Sort of inward, but I don't know. I mean, how much of it is BS? How much we don't know. I don't think we'll ever know. But
you look at the Jesus thing when he became, born again Christian. Mm-hmm. He did 3 albums, 3 religious albums. Shot of Love was the last one, and then that was it.
Yeah, then he became a Wilbury.
Yeah, that's right.
He went from Jesus to the Wilburys.
Talking about dirty world and parking where the sun don't shine, and right. And this is a born again Christian talking.
Yeah. Speaking of the late 80s or early 90s, I don't think I ever heard. I'll be honest, I never heard "Idiot Wind" until I just started listening to this album, so it was a new song for me. But there was a verse in there that I knew immediately. Chris, do you know what I'm talking about?
I honestly don't.
Okay. The song by Hootie and the Blowfish, "Only Want to Be With You." Do you know that song?
Yeah, I do. They were big when I was in high school, but I was never.
They totally stole the line from "Idiot Wind." Said I shot a man named Gray, took his wife to Italy. She inherited $1 million, and when I died, it came to me. That whole thing is in the song "Only Want to Be With You."
Mm-hmm.
And then the group says, and I'm tangled up in blue. So they're referencing this directly.
It's not just the words; it's how they sing it.
He's saying the exact lyrics though too. Yeah.
I only want to be with. I mean, it's the way he. I mean, it's always going back to that. It's that same sort of cadence as Dylan, and I think that's definitely. Obviously, it's done on purpose. I'm sure,
which resulted in a lawsuit, which resulted in a payment. He was not going to let that. That was like a wholesale, whole verse taken. But that just shows you how the ripple effect of that seemingly obscure verse. For me, it was seemingly obscure. I had a feeling it was a Dylan verse because he was talking about Dylan in the song. But then when I heard "Idiot Wind," I'm like, oh, that's where he stole it from. He stole that. Yeah. So maybe I'll put a link in the show notes to "Only Want to Be with You" by Hootie and the Blowfish and "Idiot Wind." "Idiot Wind" is Kevin. That's a bite. That's probably the nastiest song. Everything else is kind of nice, to degrees. "Idiot Wind,"
and there's a great version of it on Hard Rain.
Yeah, it is.
The electric. I'm telling you should listen to it. It's great.
It
really gets angry.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd like to hear that one. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, because I mean, he literally talks about like the stupid breath that's coming out of your mouth, and it's just like, I'm like, wow, like, if you're not talking about a relationship, you really have some deep stories in your mind that you really digging into.
How do you deny that came from like going through a divorce?
Yeah, it's strange. I don't know if it was at this time, but Bob Dylan became obsessed with Mavis Staples. You know who Mavis Staples is from the Staple Singers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and he kept on asking her to marry him. And she's like, no. Like that was from Mavis. I heard that story from Mavis Staples. She's like, Bob Dylan would not leave me alone. Like he kept. I'm gonna guess it was around this time because that's when the band did The Last Waltz and the Staple Singers, and they probably had a lot of cross interactions at the time. But he had become obsessed with Mavis Staples.
I had watched him. David Letterman had an anniversary show on. His talk show was whatever it was, how many years, and he had Bob Dylan on. And who played with him? Mavis Staples came out. And
see?
And it's like a Rolling Stone.
Wow.
Yeah, I think she said she regrets not connecting with him. It was like a relative interview maybe from a couple of years ago, and she goes, I kind of, he was really pursuing me, and I probably should have, because I think she really likes him. Again, the guy's very enigmatic, so and you can't deny that. There is a certain magnetism that the guy has, even though he's harangued. And Kevin, let me ask you, at the time, was there that Bob Dylan, like that whole people making impressions of him and how he sang and nasally, like, was that a thing back then, or was?
I don't think it was so much a thing back then like you see now. No.
Yeah.
But that was it was a great time for him because I can remember Blood in the Tracks. But then I also remember when the Desire album came out. That thing shot right up it was like #1 right away. I'm telling you. I actually think Desire got better write-ups than Blood in the Tracks did when it came out.
It's possible because this was very, very middling reviews. And much like other pieces of music, years later in the rearview mirror, they're like, oh, we totally missed the boat on this. Like there was something there that we weren't hearing or seeing, or maybe being too critically harsh and not understanding where Dylan was going.
If you look at any Bob Dylan list of the albums, how they rate them, it's always the top 3 are Blood in the Tracks, Highway 61, and then not Time Out of Mind, but Blonde on Blonde.
Blonde on Blonde.
That's what I was going to say.
It's always rated #1.
Yeah, well, that's a monster, of course. But it's like these albums that's sort of fall in between seem to be the ones that fans really dig. I think like the critics are always talking about Blonde on Blonde, and the enormous, and of course the earlier stuff, the impact that he had politically. But this kind of stuff, just like the more personal stuff, that's when the critics are like, not so much. Fans love it though, right? I mean, we connect. I think we connect more to the more sort of getting to know the person inside, with Time Out of Mind, he's talking about death, and like, because he had that near death experience of having his problems with his heart. So he's writing like Not Dark Yet, I think, is one of his greatest. But it's like those kinds of things, like, to be so open, like Dean pointed out, and yet to actually try I didn't even want to even attempt to meet the man, because it would be, you wouldn't have, what kind of conversation would you have with him? Like, you would know.
Yeah. What was that?
He'd probably blow right by you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Or it would be so anticlimactic, right? Because he doesn't give you, like, I think he gives, and I guess I can respect that as well, that he's like, I'll give it to you, but I'm going to give it to you on my own terms. Right. And I'm not going to put everything out on the lawn in interviews. And And you can even see when he was young, if you look back to interviews when he had first started, he was very guarded then. Actually, he supposedly has a really good sense of humor, and you could see a little bit of that when he was younger. He took everything as like a lark, and like, this is ridiculous that you think I'm the statesman of a gen. I'm like 22, and I'm like all of a sudden the next Woody Guthrie or something like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting too, because it's kind of like the antithesis of what you see today with, you know, social media. Like, you know, rock stars of all shapes and sizes and pop stars are constantly on social media, and their life is fully on display. And what kind of makes Dylan cool is you really don't know a whole lot about him. He is very enigmatic and that kind of stuff. And even when he made that Rolling Thunder Review documentary, like 4 or 5 years ago, half of it was like BS. He was like making stuff up in the middle because he didn't want to like just tell the story straight.
Yeah, it's true. That's right.
I think that's probably where he gets his entertainment from, is just kind of, you know, he understands how people kind of lionize him. And I think he tries internally. I think he just tries to, like, he messes with it because he doesn't believe it. And he had said that a while ago. Like, everyone thinks I'm a prophet, and I'm not a prophet. And everyone thinks and I'm not this thing, you know. And he's tried to deconstruct it, and he keeps trying it. But then every time he does, Kevin, it almost seems like what he does is a masterstroke when he's just making music. But then people interpret, like he gets interpreted on a sliding scale, right?
They break everything. They break everything he does apart. Exactly. Yeah. You know, they're trying to analyze everything he's doing. And to him, he's like you say, he's just making music. This is what he does. He's a poet.
Yeah. You know? And for years he's been saying that. He goes, listen, I'm just, you know, just here it is. And but I think from the beginning, when he was that young artist and in a time of social upheaval, whatever he was saying was connecting, and that just kind of put him on a whole other pedestal at the time, which he was never able to shake. And God knows he tried by going electric and doing all these other things. And
disappearing for 2 years.
Then he disappeared for 2 years. You had a motorcycle accident.
Accident.
Yeah, and then that's when he connected with the band, and
then putting an album out like Self-Portrait, which was all other people's music that he recorded, and it was just something completely different than he ever did, because I think he wanted to kind of break that myth that he was such a genius.
Yeah.
But then by doing that, they called him a genius because he did that. Only a genius would try and tear it down. So he must be a genius because he's not keeping doing, you know, like, so he couldn't win for losing, you know? So what he decided to do is I'm just going to do whatever tickles my fancy. I'm going to be in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. I'm going to do a movie. I'm going to paint. I'm going to do just whatever. And and kind of almost let the chips fall where they may, which I think is a really good, I think that attitude kind of centers you in a weird way, or probably allowed him to kind of keep a sense of normality of, I can't feed into this. I can't make decisions based on it. So he would, like Eric said, he would do Sky is Blue. No, Sky is Yellow, just because almost. Right.
Yeah. It's almost, the you know, he just totally avoids expectation, you know, people just putting him on this sort of level, like Joan Baez, when that relationship he had with her in the early days, and she was just totally jaded by the fact that he just up and left. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing this folky thing. I'm not the voice of a generation. He flat out told her that, and she was just like floored by that. I think to this day, I think she never forgave him for that. You know, it's strange, very strange.
So, Kevin, if there were someone who has never listened to this album before, but they're like, I'm not a big Dylan fan, because there are still a lot. It took me a long time to come around. If you know, we're talking about this album, what 3 songs would you kind of tee these 3 up, and it'll, you know, I think you'll kind of get what we're talking about.
On the Blood in the Tracks album, I would do Tangled Up in Blue, Idiot Wind, and Shelter from the Storm.
Wow,
those 3.
That's a good spread.
I mean, Tangled Up, that's a great album opener, that song.
It's a fantastic song. I could listen to that over and over. Yeah. The cadence, the storytelling, like I said, like you can, when I listen to that song, I can picture like him, You know, just when he uses like, you know, one day the axe fell, like he uses such colloquial terms in his lyrics and slang that it makes it very accessible, that you can, it makes it very easy to picture what's going on. I think that's what it is with
the
Dylan.
tied of laces in my shoes. That's a great line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his vocals on that are probably one of the best ones too. It's the typical like what you think of as a typical Dylan style singing, but he's really singing. You know, he is also singing on that song as well, I think, and I think that's what elevated that one to kind of that cult status. Simple Twist of Fate, I think, is another. It's kind of a backup to that, I think. You know, again, it's got a very unique. All of these have like a very unique kind of style of singing, like Simple Twist of Fate, almost like the same as Jack of Hearts. Like it ends on a singing Simple Twist of Fate in a particular way each time. You know, he always returns. He returns to that lyric, just like he did with Lily Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts. He returns to it, you know, and I think that's kind of that seems to be a theme with a lot of these songs. I'll offer you shelter from the storm, right? It always kind of comes back. He kind of returns to it,
and which kind of speaks to his, you know, everybody talks about, like, you know, if you don't like Dylan's music, you can't, there's no denying his lyrics and what he's saying. And that's kind of the fact that he uses those tricks that really does speak to his ability as a poet, because that's a classical rhetorical device for somebody who's writing or speaking or trying to address an audience or make a point, is that whole idea of coming back. And so it really does speak to his skill as a poet, that's something that he incorporates into his songwriting.
Yeah, and he doesn't always do it the smooth. I mean, he's not the smoothest singer either, but he puts the passion behind it, and I think that compensates, right, Kevin? I mean, I think that's part of the kind of what turns people on, but it's also the appeal.
Yep.
Yeah. As well, right?
And I think what's cool about this record is I feel like he took this record, and I really like New Morning, the one before it, you know, to Eric's point about some of those like albums that fall through the cracks. It's almost like he took the voice that he had in the 60s and melded it a little bit with what he was doing on records like Nashville Skyline. Like he hadn't completely gone back to that 60s voice, but it's like he almost like worked it into what he was doing or trying to do with Nashville Skyline and records like that.
Yeah. I think we're getting a more evolved artist, and Eric and I have talked about this in the past too. Is, you know, at the time when he first came up, rock and roll wasn't a career, right? It was kind of a thing, and it wasn't. No one ever thought this was a long-term career. Rock and roll, it's going to fade away. It's going to go away. So, I think you have to evolve. I think the major artists, the ones that were successful, understood that. You know, that you're not going to just kind of be recycling the same type of music. You may get a couple of hits out of that, but music was evolving so rapidly that the artists also kind of took the mantle up. And Dylan, like I said, was one that just...
Even when he finished with the religious albums, and he went into later on, he started using backup singers, which, you know, he'd never done before. And then, you know, he's finished with that. But he's always trying different things. That's one thing about him, I think. Right?
Yep. Absolutely. He's constantly experimenting.
Yeah.
Which sometimes works really well, and then sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, the guy takes his lumps, and maybe by not having that ego, that allows him to weather those storms, right? He doesn't care.
No, it's
what
like
people say, right? So he does it. So he's unaffected. He's not like, oh, that was a swing and a miss. Let me go back to Nashville Skyline and do another country album. He's like, no, I'm going to do whatever I'm into at the time. And if it's religion, if it's whatever it is, that's where Dylan is at that time, you know. And I think that's what makes him very enigmatic. Is you can't pin him down. He's still, even now, full of surprises. That Rough and Rowdy Ways album. I mean, it's just like, I contain multitudes and such great. Like, he's still attacking it. He's still kind of going for it. And it's like you said, it's refreshing to see these artists that that still go for it, like him and Neil Young, and still have that attitude. Still have the attitude. That's the thing. Neil Young has that attitude also. Some of these guys mellow, Eric, as they get older, right? They kind of, but then there's a couple of grouches still.
Yeah. In this case, it works. Yeah.
A
lot of our favorite artists became grouchy. So it's hard to defend them anymore because
name two, name two
miserable bastards, But and with Dylan, I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm a bastard and I know it, and
he's always been that way. So
yeah,
like
he's never changed.
Because I can't, I don't, it's like almost like he's saying, I don't want to know you. I'm doing this for me, kind of thing. I don't know. It's just it's hard to figure him out.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, do you think that's
fascinating?
Do you think that's the mark of a true artist? Is
I think so. Yeah. I think he's he doesn't care. He cares about the art. He cares about making albums. He's going to do what he wants. Like he did the album of the old standards, Shadows in the Night. Not my favorite album, but you know what? He didn't care. He did it. He wanted to do it, and he did it.
Yeah.
That was like, what did he follow that up with? Like an even bigger standards album, like a triple album.
He did three, right? I think he did three altogether or something. The American Songbook, like the American.
And that's the tour that Dean and I saw him on.
Yeah.
So you can just imagine.
Not to rehash it, but it was our first time seeing Dylan, and I didn't recognize any. If he did some of his old songs, we didn't recognize him because he has basically. From what I've read recently, he doesn't play guitar anymore. Like he's not even interested in playing the guitar. He's like, I'll either sing or I'll sit in front of a piano. So what we got were reinterpretations. And
a lot of standards. And he was doing the standards. He was almost like poking fun at it. Like he had this like weird kind of body language going. He was just acting all like, even trying to do the song, like not even like taking it seriously. He was just like, I did this album, and I'm like, and he pissed a lot off the audience. They were angry.
Yeah,
he's like it or not. I think Charlie Sexton is in his band. The guitar. You guys know Charlie Sexton?
Mm-hmm.
He had that one hit in the '80s called "Beat So Lonely." He was supposed to be like the next big thing as a guitar player, and I think he ended up with Bob Dylan's band, but. I think this is as good a time as any to try Three Lies and a Truth.
Okay.
You guys, what do you think? You guys are ready?
Let's do it.
I'm ready.
We're going to roll this out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read 4 statements. Nobody say anything. We'll go in order. I'll choose the order. And you need to tell me which one of these statements is true. 3 of them are lies. I just need to know from you which one is the truth. And if you're playing at home, again, let us know on social media what you picked if you got it right. These are 4 statements about Bob Dylan, but only one is true. So let me read them, and then I'll pick one of you, and then I'll read them again so you can kind of get it. But here we go. Here's the first statement. Dylan was only 20 years old when he was signed to Columbia Records. Because he was considered a minor at the time, to get around that, he claimed that he was an orphan. B. In addition to his Heaven's Door bourbon, Dylan has recently contracted with a farm in Bethel, New York to produce free-range eggs from chickens. C. Dylan was supposed to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Robbie Robertson, but he was in rehab at the time, so he was inducted by Joni Mitchell. And then D. Dylan has only had 4 top 10 hits, but 2 of them were number ones. Okay? I'll go through that one more time, and then I'll call on you. A. First statement, Dylan was only 20 years old when he was signed to Columbia Records, as he was considered a minor at the time. To get around it, he claimed that he was an orphan. B, in addition to his Heaven's Door bourbon, Dylan has recently contracted with a farm in Bethel, New York to produce free-range eggs. C, Dylan was supposed to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Robbie Robertson, but he was in rehab at the time, so Joni Mitchell inducted him. D, Dylan has only had 4 top 10 hits, but 2 of them were number ones. Chris, which one of those are true?
I'm torn between B and C, but B seems so random that it would have to be true, so I'm saying B is true.
B, in addition to his Heaven's Door bourbon, Dylan has recently contracted with a farm in Bethel, New York to produce free-range eggs. You're going with B.
I'm going with B.
Okay. Eric, I'm saving the expert for last. I'm not letting him get in on this and then change everything.
I'm kind of with Chris on this one, but for me, it's A and B.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't put it past him. for any of these choices.
Okay.
But I think I'm going to go with B myself. Yeah.
B.
Yeah.
In addition to his Heaven's Door bourbon, Dylan has recently contracted with a farm in Bethel, New York to produce free-range eggs. All right. Kevin Clark, this all rests on you.
I'm going to say D.
D. Dylan has only had 4 top 10 hits, but 2 of them were number ones.
That's it.
All right. Everybody at home, lock in your answers. Let us know on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube how you did. The first lie. Dylan was supposed to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Robbie Robertson, but he was in rehab at the time, so he was inducted by Joni Mitchell. He was actually not inducted by Joni Mitchell. Joni Mitchell says she hates him and that he's a fake and a phony. He was inducted by Bruce Springsteen.
That sounds good.
Joni. She's another one.
The next lie. Sorry, Kevin. Dylan has only had 4 top 10 hits, but 2 of them were number ones. He's had 4 top 10 hits, but never a number one.
Okay.
Sorry. All right, we've got these 2 gentlemen have picked letter B, so we're down to 2. We're down to 2 answers here. You guys want the truth or the lie? I think you deserve the truth.
Yeah, I think
you deserve the truth. All right, here we go. I'm going to give you the truth. The truth is, Bob Dylan was only 20 years old when he was signed to Columbia Records. And because he was a minor, he told them that he was an orphan and he didn't have parents. I totally made up the whole egg thing because it was.
Now,
you know what?
What's that?
I was thinking 18 is a man. That's how I was thinking. So that's
me too. But at the time, back in whenever he was signed, it was like 20 was still a minor, and he's like, "No, my parents are dead."
Yeah.
He pulled a Jim Morrison before Morrison did it. So, the egg thing was total figure. I made that up. I just there's not even a fact that's based on. It
just sounded.
But you know what? But it sounded it does because he wouldn't, like I said, he wouldn't put it past the guy, to be.
Thank you all for playing. I stumped them.
Very
got them all. I wiped out the whole panel
this
time. I feel good.
Like a Rolling Stone wasn't number one.
Yeah.
No. No, he had 4 top 10 hits, but never a number one. Much like Creedence Clearwater Revival, they had a bunch of hits, maybe some number 2, but they never had a number 1. And it's funny, I think we've talked about this, Eric, where these songs are so ingrained into our lives and the tapestry, and you think that they hit. Like you think Led Zeppelin had hits. They didn't. Right. But we know these songs and we love them and we hear them on any WFM in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
But they were not chart topping hits, but they were very influential in a different way. Like the album hit number 1, Blood on the Tracks. But yeah, I think this hit 31. I think it's, but yeah, he's had only 4 top 10. So thank you all for playing. How do you feel now, Kevin? Did I,
all right. I'm good.
Are we still good? We're still good?
Still good.
Okay.
At least I didn't think it was eggs. Anyway.
You mean eggs? So Kevin didn't fall in the egg trap. What's that, Kevin? I mean, Chris?
I was going to say, but you think today, like all these guys, well, I've got my, the guy from Tool has wine and Michael Anthony from Van Halen has hot sauce. And,
it's true.
Yeah, but Kevin's like, at least I didn't fall for the eggs.
Yeah, no the eggs.
You can look forward to 3 Lies and a Truth in all of our upcoming episodes as well. And it's getting harder and harder. I have to get more and more clever, especially as we have Chris on, and I'm sure we'll have Kevin back on again too. So they know how crafty I can be. So we'll have to make sure we get that. As we wind it down, let's kind of. I mean, Kevin gave us 3 tracks already. He gave us Tangled Up in Blue, Idiot Wind, and Shelter from the Storm. Right? Eric, what would you pick? Would you go along? Is there anything different you would change to kind of?
I love Simple Twist of Fate.
Okay.
Shelter from the Storm, but you know what? I like the alternate version. That I don't even know where to find it except on the Jerry Maguire soundtrack. It was played in the film.
Of Simple Twist of Fate?
No, Shelter from the Storm.
Shelter from the Storm.
It's the closing song of the film when they're walking through the park, and it's just an all acoustic, and he's playing harmonica on it. I prefer that version of the song, and I don't know where else to find it.
I think Kevin's got it.
I think Kevin has the answer to that.
There's actually a bootleg out, More Blood in the Tracks.
Okay.
And that's where it's on. It's different takes songs. Yep, you'll find it.
Yeah, you know what? I'll put a link in the show notes if anybody wants to check out the acoustic version of that.
That's what I love about Cameron Crowe. He knows how to pick these obscure.
Oh yeah, he's encyclopedic.
Like Rolling Stone.
That was his thing.
Yeah.
So Chris, are you going to follow in your father's footsteps, or are you breaking away? Are you breaking the family tie?
No, actually, I mean, to me, like Tangled Up in Blue has always been probably in my top 5 of Dylan, but I really like You're Gonna Make Me Lonesome When You Go. And then I was still listening to the record when I was driving over here, and it kind of stuck in my head and really struck me more than even before is Buckets of Rain.
Yeah.
Like, kind of add some different ones, but yeah, those on top of the ones that have already been said, like definitely You're Gonna Make Me Lonesome When You Go and Buckets of Rain.
Yeah, I think there's some commonality. I think everybody's going with, Tangled Up in Blue. I would go with. I would go with Idiot Wind just for the epicness of it and how it is a little bit more of a biting song, and then I go with Buckets of Rain also because then it shows that tender side as well. So in this way, you kind of get I think those three are kind of a good look. Tangled Up in Blue is pretty popular, so people might find it recognizable if they wanted to try that out. And then Idiot Wind kind of asks you to think a little bit more and stay with it because it's a long song and you got to kind of stay there with it. And then Buckets of Rain is just beautiful. I mean, the Shelter from the Storm too. Those are just two beautiful songs. And I never thought I would say that about Dylan. I used to be a Dylan hater. I hated the guy. I couldn't stand him. Like I never got it. Right. I was one of those people. Even when he was in the Wilburys, which I loved, I'm a Jeff Lynne fan. So I was all over the Wilburys. So I'm like, you know what? Take the Dylan out.
Yeah.
But it's only until, past couple of years. I'm like, no, I actually, you know what? Leave the Dylan in. I get it. I get it now. And I think that's what people need to understand is you have to kind of understand the man a little bit, Kevin, right? To kind of, especially now with everything that he's done in his life. Maybe in 75 it might have been a little different, but I think with everything that he's done now, I think you can kind of look back and kind of appraise the career and then to kind of understand him a little better.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's funny too because like as much of a fan as my dad is, my mom.
My mother hates him.
My mom.
Oh, really?
My mother hates him.
Where is she? Where is she? Wait. Where is she? Get her on. We got to hear a dissenting opinion. I mean, we got to get someone in here that's set us straight.
It's to the point where if my dad was driving my daughter to school on the way to driving my mom to work, my daughter would purposely put Dylan on.
She said,
to get her mad.
"Grandpa, put on Dylan."
She's really trying to stick it to her, huh?
Oh,
my daughter's
a devil. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Well, I'll tell you. Let's do this then. When we do an episode that's called "I Hate Bob Dylan," we have to get her on, right? We need someone for the prosecution.
She'll be the president.
But I was there too, and maybe you know what? It's never too late to turn. It's never too late for you to change her mind. There might be one day, that kind of just kind of goes on with me. I kind of didn't get it, and then I kind of got it, and that's the beauty of music. And now I have all this other stuff from him that I'm open to and can enjoy.
Just so much you could listen to. Exactly.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of. And again, somebody who's so prolific has probably has more bootleg stuff than he has properly recorded releases. I mean, the guy was that prolific, just like run the tape. And that's where the band got that work ethic from too. It's just like hit record and we'll just, whatever happens. Yep. And I think that's why they were really good foils. And I think that's probably why he liked to hang out with them so much and trusted them. Cause it was just kind of like, yeah, we get that, we're not going to fight and just put it on and let's see what happens,
And then even like his writing and his influence spilled over. Like if you want to talk about the period, like you could put Big Pink into like his writing.
That's right.
Because a lot of Big Pink was from the work that he did with them.
When he was doing the bootleg tapes. Yep.
Yeah. Did you ever, just to not to get too far afield, but there's a great documentary and it's an album. It's called The New Basement Tapes. You ever hear that?
Yes.
Documentary on Showtime.
That was great.
Oh yeah, well they actually recorded at Big Pink, right?
Yeah, they had access to his unfinished. He had a bunch of lyrics, and it was the guy from Mumford and Sons. It was the guy from My Morning Jacket. It was Rhiannon Giddens, and it was the guy from Dawes, and a couple other people. And he gave them all these unfinished lyrics, and he allowed them to create songs based on the unfinished lyrics, and interspersed was interviews about like with like the band and Robbie Robertson, and talking about, because it was all from that era, it was from that Big Pink era, and it was all him talking about the lyrics that like they found like all this handwritten stuff that he had done, and it was like, yeah, just make me. So they came out with a double album. It's a great documentary about it, and then seeing people adapt it, and of course that song Wagon Wheel, which is very popular. Rock Me Mama Like a Wagon Wheel. It's by Old Crow Medicine Show. You never heard? Darius Rucker did a cover of it. That's actually like that snippet. The Rock Me Mama Like a Wagon Wheel is written by Bob Dylan, and the guy from Old Crow Medicine Show was like 20 years old, and he approached Dylan. He goes, "Can I finish this song?" And Dylan's like, "Yeah, go ahead." And it became Wagon Wheel, which is like one of the most popular like folk rock songs of recent memory.
Check it out now.
Yeah.
Really? You never heard Wagon Wheel? Yes, you guys, you absolutely did. I know you have. You probably don't recognize it as that, but I'll email as soon as we're done. You're going to get an email with that link. So,
all right, cool.
Yeah, I think that's going to do it. I think we've kind of hit on the enigmatic and hard to pin down Bob Dylan at a very interesting point in his career. The I don't give a shit phase. I don't think I've hit that phase in my life yet, but still waiting.
Not many people get to hit that phase, unfortunately.
or Eric, have I?
No,
Eric's
no
known me for 40 plus years, so he'd be the one to tell me like if I've hit that yet. But yeah, this is a great piece of art, Kevin. I'm glad that you joined us for someone that was there, that had the firsthand experience. I can't imagine what that was like of being there for, and especially in the 70s. I mean, you were there for everything: Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Boston. Yeah, I mean, we were there, but we were sucking our thumbs and playing in the playground. We were in the playground. You were living it.
That's it. We were there. That was my time.
So yeah, I'd love open invitation to come back on with or without your son. I'm cutting you loose from him. So if he unless you need him for technical stuff, then he's got to come along and tag team you.
You might have to come for the technical stuff.
Make sure the computer's working.
Yeah, hey Chris, set your father up, then leave. No, absolutely not. Chris is invaluable to us too. That just the wealth of knowledge, and I see where he gets it from, Kevin. The love of music is something special, and when it's shared, it's great. When it's shared between a father and son, or relatives, like I try and do with my nephews. Like my nephew texted me the other day, "What's some really good songs from the early 70s that I haven't heard?" I'm like, "Oh my God, okay." So, and I gave him, and he's like, "Oh, this is," so that, there's something special in just the sharing. And Eric does it with his sons and his daughter, sharing music. This is what I listen to, or check this out. And then a conversation starts. And that's how we keep these, and hopefully that's what we do here too. And is keeping that music alive and keeping those stories about them. A lot of times the stories are as intriguing, or it's an entryway into checking these things out. And Eric keeps it alive with his family, and you're obviously keeping it alive in your family. And I just play ELO for my dogs. I don't know if they understand it, but I play it. And they go to sleep. I play, telephone line, and I don't know what it is. They just kind of lay there and look at me. And I'm like, you're just not getting it, I guess. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. You can check us out on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. Leave us a comment. Let us know how you did on the 3 Lies and a Truth. Did I stump you, or did I get you, or did you get it? Let us know. Like I said earlier, episodes drop every Thursday. We've got new ones coming out, so we appreciate that. Christopher Clark, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
As always.
Joining us.
Yep.
Also, I need to double thank you for introducing us to your father, Kevin, who is another wealth of knowledge. So thank you for that. And Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. What a lot of fun. Great time, great conversation. Look forward to having you back when we'll be doing this until I get into that I don't give a shit phase like Dylan, but I don't foresee that happening for a while. So we got a lot more episodes to come. So for Eric, for Kevin, and for Chris, this has been Dean. We will catch you on the flip side.